What are the biggest mistakes salespeople make in their first meeting with a prospect?
Trying to do too much. People buy based on emotion, justify their decisions with logic. Every salesperson on the planet's heard that expression, and no one does it. And I struggle with that. I'm like, how could that be? Why is no one doing it? When you're prospecting, you're not selling your service, you're not selling your technology, you're selling the first meeting.
If you could give every salesperson one piece of advice to win more first meetings, what would it be?
I'll tell you one that's a non-negotiable.
Hello, everyone. My guest today is Lee Salz, a globally recognized sales differentiation strategist and author of The First Meeting Differentiator. I'm so excited about this book. This is actually his third book in his best-selling series. He's known as a sales contrarian. A few of you will be able to learn what that means later, but Lee really challenges outdated methods and teaches sales teams how to win more deals by differentiating the what and the how they sell. He's named a top speaker of the year and ranked on Global Guru's top sales thought leaders. Please welcome Lee Salz. Thank you for joining us today.
Brandon, thank you so much for having me.
Dude, this has been great. This is the second or third time we're getting together. I feel like every time you come out with a new book. So Lee sent me his book early. I got to pre-read it. He sent me an awesome t-shirt. He's got like 100 testimonials in the book right when you open it. What is the first meeting differentiator and why does it matter so much? Why did you write this thing?
It's a great question. The first meeting is the deal foundation, right? Anybody in sales knows that first meeting is the go, no-go. If you don't get that right, there won't be a second meeting. And what I find most salespeople, when they describe that first meeting, they say it's a discovery meeting, right? That's the vernacular. Say, okay, great. So how do we prepare for that meeting? Well, we make a list of questions we're going to ask and the message points we're going to share. Wonderful. What does the person you're meeting with get out of that interaction, out of that meeting? And they'll go silent. They'll say, well, wait a minute. We're going to learn about my company and my stuff. It's a big fail. Here's why. Brandon, there's two types of sales, and I'm going to use a bathroom environment to depict those two. You ready?
Yeah, let's go.
You buy toilet paper, I sell toilet paper. You're buying my competitor's toilet paper, and I'm saying, no, you should be buying mine because it's superior. What's a takeaway sale? That's the environment most salespeople are in. The other type of sale, you buy toilet paper, I sell bidets. It's an alternative way of addressing an issue. Well, like I said, most salespeople are in that takeaway environment, which means they already have a supplier. They have a provider in place. And you're saying, I know you have 400 things on your plate, but put those aside and meet with me. And what you're going to get out of it is learning about my company and my stuff. Well, I already have a provider, so I'm not taking that meeting. There's a problem right there. That's what makes prospecting so darn hard. We have conditioned the general public to believe, and rightfully so, the only time to meet with a salesperson is when you're looking to buy something because you're not going to get anything out of that interaction. That's the problem with a discovery mindset. But if you think about the times when you've gone to the doctor, you go for two reasons: to become wiser about your circumstances, understand potential remedies. Brandon, would you go to the doctor if you thought the entire meeting, the entire interaction was for them? We're going to gather all this information, all this data about Brandon, everything for you. That's what discovery is. We're not providing meaningful value. Now, in the medical community, they don't call it discovery. They call it a consultation. I'm not going to say it created the expression, but I've embraced it. I've taken that to heart. Because when you see that first meeting as a consultation, you recognize the person you're meeting with also has to get meaningful value out of that interaction. Now, Brandon, I'm going to guess your audience likes free things. I mean, who doesn't?
Yeah, we love free things.
All right. Well, I'm going to give you a URL. It's going to be very difficult to remember. You ready?
Yes.
Meaningfulvalue.com. You can download my tip sheet, 10 ways to provide meaningful value during first meetings. Now, here's the cool part. Once you define what that meaningful value is, you fold that into your prospecting messaging. So, Brandon, when we get together, I'm going to share with you a best practice that operations leaders are using to creatively reduce costs. Oh, I'm going to learn something when I meet with Lee. I'll take that meeting. See, if they're going to take that meeting, I keep coming back to this expression, meaningful value. If they're going to take that meeting, they have to learn something that's going to help them in their role, help their company, or best of all, help them both. So they're going to learn something. Maybe it's a best practice, a way to drive revenue, a way to reduce costs. Maybe there's some compliance opportunity. Maybe there's an inefficiency that you found. You fold it into your prospecting messaging, and that increases the likelihood of taking that meeting with you.
Yeah, I like that. I hate doing multiple sales calls. When it comes to these meetings, like what are the biggest mistakes salespeople make in their first meeting with a prospect?
Probably the biggest one, it's an overarching one, is trying to do too much. Are you familiar with the name Herman Ebbinghaus?
No, no.
Okay. So he was a researcher in the late 1800s, and he conducted a memory and retention study. What he found was, and this is going to hurt, people forget 50% of what they learned within 24 hours and remember less than 10% a week later. So let's say we have a 1 hour first meeting, a consultation, if you will. A week later, they remember 6 minutes of it. It's a big ouch right there. We try to do too much in that first meeting rather than pace the process. Now, if you're in a sales environment where you're expected to walk out with an order, that's a different story. But if it's a multi-step complex process, the overarching objective of the first meeting is to peak a high enough level of interest that they say, I want to continue interacting with you. I want to continue meeting with you. I want to have Zooms. If we take that to heart, we recognize, you know what? Bringing our compliance executive, showing a demo, bringing out the slide deck doesn't happen in the first meeting because they're not going to remember it. And what are you going to say? I know you don't remember that demo. Why don't I do it again for you? It'll happen. So our objective in that first meeting needs to be to keep a high enough level of interest so that they want to continue interacting with us afterwards. So that's just one example of something, but it's an overarching one. The expression pace the process, pace the process. So you say, so what questions should I be asking? What information should I be sharing? Great question to be asking yourself. In chapter 2 of the first meeting differentiator, I provide a methodology to reverse engineer that first meeting. And there's a lot of downloads in there, and there's a worksheet, or I should say a workshop, because it's a multi-page document, to download to guide you through this. And the foundation question is this. It was a great first meeting if I accomplished what? It was a great first meeting if I accomplished what? So in other words, let's define what success is. Because once we do that, then we come back and we say, okay, so what questions am I going to ask? Only the ones tied to outcomes I've identified. What information am I going to share? Only the information tied to outcomes that I've identified. Actions am I going to take? Only the actions tied to the outcomes that I've identified. So in other words, the first meeting now becomes a project plan. And so with that overarching theme of piquing enough interest so they want to continue interacting with you, that's the umbrella that shapes that discussion.
That's awesome. And what outcomes should they be targeting? What do you think those goals should be or are? When you come like complex, mid-ticket, low-ticket deals, like kind of just going high ticket, mid-ticket, low ticket, what would you say those goals are in that first meeting to create that differentiator?
And it's going to vary based on the nature of the sale, but I'll tell you one that's a non-negotiable is qualifying. Right? The most precious resource for every salesperson on the planet is time. And so often I'm asked to work with clients on a postmortem, a deal that they say they lost. And they'll take me through this long sales cycle. Once they take me through it, I'll say, oh, you didn't lose this deal. They'll say, well, you didn't win it. Well, that's true. You didn't win it, but you didn't lose it. You were never a viable option. And that's something you could have learned in the first 15 minutes of that first meeting. I'm a believer that the first meeting is where you're making your go, no-go decision. So part of that first meeting is qualifying. But one of the challenges salespeople have with qualifying is it's relative to something. So what a lot of salespeople have been given is a tool called an ideal client profile. If you're listening to this talk and you have one of those, please throw it away. You don't want one of those. Here's why. An ideal client profile says if all the stars were to align, this is the kind of business we'd love to have. It's like a lottery ticket. It's a 1 in a gazillion chance you're going to stumble across one of those. Brandon, look up the word ideal in the dictionary. You know what you see? Existing only in one's mind. Like sales isn't hard enough that we have a tool that's only in our head. But what every salesperson needs is a target client profile. And we're not wordsmithing, it's a totally different concept. A target client profile says, this is who will perceive the most meaningful value in what we offer, which gives deals the greatest likelihood of coming to fruition. So there's a chapter in the first meeting differentiator where I walk you through the steps. And again, there's a downloadable workshop for this to put together a 12 component profile that will give you a level of clarity that you don't have today around which deals will have the greatest likelihood of coming to fruition, because those are the ones where they'll perceive the most meaningful value in what you offer. And that becomes that benchmarking qualifying tool that salespeople need. Because I'm a big believer, I'm sure you are as well. If you're going to lose early before you waste a lot of time and company resources to do it.
Yeah, I love the idea about losing early versus later, right? That's interesting about taking the deals and like, no, that doesn't count on your win-loss statement. That was never winnable. What would be an example of a target client persona versus an ideal client persona?
Well, an ideal client, for example, has no structure to it, right? It's just here's some information and, to kind of give you some idea of what we might be looking for. It says 12 components. And so, for example, size. It's like Goldilocks and the Three Bears. What's too big? What's too small? What's just right? And define size in whatever way is relevant for your sale. If it's in revenue, if it's in units, if it's in profit dollars, employees, hires, whatever way that you define size, to be able to say, in this range is where they'll perceive the most meaningful value that gives deals the greatest likelihood of coming to fruition. There's a section in there called requirements, and you would think that that's a negative. It's actually a positive. What requirements do I want them to have that will lead them to perceive the most meaningful value in what we offer? So let's say you sell background screening services like background checks.
Yeah.
And you say, our specialty is providing them around the world. I want to hear that they have global requirements because they're going to perceive the most meaningful value in what we offer rather than just domestically here. And the last component is called deal breakers. Some of it is the converse of the first 11 components, but this is designed to highlight, if you're hearing any of these things, run, because there is an extremely low likelihood that they're ever going to become a client. So go find another opportunity.
I like that. And when it comes to, prepping for this first meeting, how can salespeople win the deal before the meeting even begins?
Well, back when I was starting out in sales, let me put my teeth in because that was a long time ago. You could walk into a company and say, "What do you do here?" Imagine someone saying that today.
Yeah, it would be
unheard of. So one of the things that I coach salespeople to do, and it's so easy today, to go into ChatGPT and you can put in the most basic prompt. What are the primary issues that operations executives and manufacturing are concerned about today? And let's say it gives me 10. From that 10, which ones can I address? So let's say there's 3. Now I come into this meeting and I say, by the way, the things that we found is that operations leaders in manufacturing are struggling with these issues, A, B, and C. What's been your experience with that? That question right there shows you've done your homework, you have expertise in their arena, and it also helps them to feel comfortable because when it comes to issues, they want to feel like they're part of a group. So I don't want to feel like I'm the only one that has this problem, that has this issue. So operations leaders are struggling with this as well. So that paves the way. But there's a balance with the amount of research you do. And I'll use a baseball metaphor. If you spend all your time warming up in the bullpen so that you got nothing for the game, that's not a good thing. The converse is also true. Coming into the game without having stretched or thrown a pitch in the bullpen, that also doesn't work. So you got to find that balance where you're not doing all this research and you don't have enough activity to fill a pipeline, but you're not also making the sales call of the moment where the person feels like you're calling to sell them something they don't want, they don't need, because you got a number to hit.
Yeah, when it comes to those issues, right, using this ChatGPT prompt, it might give you like 3 issues. Do you want to come into that meeting with a very strong point of view, saying like, hey, I believe or I hypothesize you're dealing with these issues and here's the recommended strategy or solution? Or would you run sales discovery and in like to do the audit and then the strategic recommendation? Like, how would you handle that between asking those questions and running the discovery versus being that expert doctor consultant recommending something to do before you run the questions?
I am going to get discovery out of your vocabulary. I'm on a mission, man. We're going to get that out. It's a function of the research. So the first level of research I did is at the role level. So operations leaders in manufacturing. If I research that company and I find that that company specifically has that issue, then I'm going to be much more specific in how I bring it up in the meeting. So something that we find a lot of operations leaders are struggling with today in manufacturing, and from my research, it looks like your company is having some issues with this as well, is blank. I'm not going to come in and make a blanket statement and say, you have this issue, unless I know for sure that they do.
And then if they agree with you, then you roll into, here's a strategy or two that could help, et cetera.
Well, no, I would go backwards a little bit. Before I'm going forward and talking about what I can do, I'm asking some questions around what they've done. So what have you tried to address that? What have you tried to do? What conversations have you had with your current provider to address that issue? So one of the things that I find that's really interesting in sales, I'm gonna put you in a scenario. You ready, Brandon?
Yeah, let's do it. Let's
You're at a
run.
cocktail party and you run into an acquaintance you haven't talked to in a while. And you say, hey, what's new? And they say, I'm getting divorced. What's the first thing you say?
I typically say, oh, I'm sorry to hear that.
I'm sorry to hear that. Right?
Yeah.
Now, think about what we do in the sales world. We're having issues with this. What do we say? We can fix that. What's the parallel? The first thing out of your mouth. Say,
Yeah.
oh, by the way, I have a business card for a great divorce lawyer. That's the first thing out of your mouth. We would never do that. So we need to start with an empathy statement.
I love that.
Say something,
That's smart.
right? Right. I'm sorry you're dealing with this. It must be so frustrating. And then a validation statement. Unfortunately, this is something we're hearing a lot from operations leaders in the manufacturing world. Now they feel like they're part of a group. I'm not the only one dealing with this particular challenge. And then I'm asking questions like I mentioned a moment ago. How long has this been an issue? What have you tried? When you've gone back to your current provider and shared these concerns with them, what have they said? What do they do for you? I'm going to explore all of that because I want them to feel that I genuinely care about them, because I do. You can't fake that. Can't fake that. There's a concept I talk about in the book called empathetic expertise. And it's based on this expression. It's been in sales since the beginning of sales time. People buy based on emotion, justify their decisions with logic. Brandon, if you had to guess, how many times in your career have you heard that expression? 4 million?
A lot.
Okay.
A lot.
I will bet you the deed to my house that if you and I recorded 100 first meetings, all sale types, all market segments, all around the world, 99 of that 100, if not all 100, the entire conversation was logic. Every salesperson on the planet's heard that expression, and no one does it. And I struggle with that. I'm like, how could that be? Why is no one doing it? And then I finally had this epiphany. You may remember from our last conversation, I talked with you about my boys, Steven and David, who both played college baseball.
Yeah.
And I remember when they were little kids, first learning the game, and the coaches would say, now, Steven, David, the name of the game is hit home runs. And you get a big smile and go, hit home runs. Well, they didn't hit home runs until they were taught how to do it. That's the mistake we're making in sales. We're saying, here's a concept, and they're going, got it. People buy based on emotion, justify their decisions with logic, but we're not teaching them how to do it. I'll share with you an interesting story. My all-time favorite television show is Law and Order. Not all the spinoffs, the original. And I was so happy when they brought it back as a reboot. And 2 seasons ago, there was this episode where the prosecutor was really frustrated with a case he was trying. Felt like he had all the evidence he needed to get a conviction, but he could see the jury wasn't with him. So he goes to the district attorney and he takes him through that case. And the district attorney looks at me and says, the problem with your case is it's all fact, no heart, and the jury isn't buying it. All logic, no emotion, and the jury isn't buying it. So Brandon, I go, ooh, well, this is interesting. So attorneys are using emotion to affect decision making. Well, I'm writing a book about this. Maybe there are some things we can borrow from the legal world and apply them to sales. Now, Law and Order says it's ripped from the headlines, but I couldn't use that as a source. So I interviewed a judge, a prosecutor, a litigator, and a trainer of litigators about ways they're using emotion to affect jury decisions. And the conversations were just fascinating. So the prosecutor said to me, we're not trying a case. I'm going to take the jury on a journey. Say that fast 3 times. Jury on a journey from having the ability to convict to having the desire to convict. The only way that happens is by arousing emotions. So think about that in the sales world, having the ability to contract with us to having the desire to contract with us.
Wow.
Then he went on to say, if I have a firefighter on the stand, I'm not asking logic questions. I'm asking emotive questions. What did you feel? What did you feel when you entered the building? I want the jury to feel like they were in that fire with the firefighter. I'm looking to arouse emotions because emotion drives action. Think about what we do in sales. We'll ask you a question like, Brandon, what's the biggest challenge you face in your business today? And as a result of that question, you're going to give me factual information. I don't want that. I want an emotive response. I want color. I want flavor. I want texture. So what if we phrase the question this way? Brandon, what's that one thing in your business that you're like, oh, we got to figure that out? What is that? You felt that question, didn't you?
Mhm.
And here we are sitting in a podcast. Imagine a question like that in the field. When we start asking emotive questions, we don't just get information. We understand how they feel about the information that they're sharing back with us. So my recommendation to salespeople is make a list of the questions that you normally ask during first meetings and look for the ones that there's an opportunity and a necessity to turn them into emotive questions because emotion drives action.
I like it. I like it. And if I was trying to kick that off, these emotion and emotive questions,
Mhm.
where are some good places to like start to just to teach the audience? Like do you have some examples that they could run with after this show?
Yeah, well, I gave you one, but what I would do is I'd make a list. Here are the questions I commonly ask during first meetings. And which ones is there an opportunity and a necessity? So not every question needs to be turned into an emotive question, but the ones that there is a necessity to change that and the opportunity to do so. So I'm working with a group and they work with architects. So this is a company that manufactures custom wood doors.
Mm.
And they call on architects because they influence the decision for custom wood doors. And one of the frustrations that architects have is when they create designs for something, when they create a design for a project, it's like a work of art. And what commonly happens is they create this gorgeous design for custom wood doors. They go to the homeowner client, they go, oh, this is gorgeous. We love it. And they go to the manufacturer, can't do that. Happens all the time. Now, my client, their specialty is custom wood doors. So they have capabilities above and beyond all the other manufacturers that are doing the more mass production. In the past, they would have asked a logic question like, what experiences have you had when you've gone to a manufacturer with your designs? And they get information. But we came up with an emotive one using a technique I call a lead-in. Something we hear from architects all the time is they come up with this incredible design, emotive, incredible design that they're excited about, their homeowner client is excited about, only to find their manufacturer can't do it. Before they even get to the question,
Mm.
the architect's already responding. But the following question with that lead in is, so what have you done in those instances? Because I know you've had that. And nonstop. And they're not getting information, they're getting emotive information. They're getting color, flavor, texture.
Mhm.
And that drives them to take action, to explore a relationship with my client.
Got it. And when you're doing this, how do you make sure the reps are running the effective first meeting without it feeling like an interrogation? Because I feel like you could like run and ask a ton of different questions.
That's right.
How
That's
do
where
you?
that reverse engineering comes in. And back to that overarching theme. I don't need to ask everything. I don't need to tell them everything. But if we go back and say, what is success? What is the definition of success for that first meeting? And then you're only going to ask those questions that are related to the outcomes that you've identified.
Yeah. And I remember when I was going through the book, we
Yeah.
write down all your different questions. I had like 30 questions, then boiled them down to really only like 5 to 7 critical questions.
Yeah, that's right.
And
You realize you can find out other information later. You don't need to know everything in that first meeting.
you'll learn like the real meat of what gets those emotives going is they'll answer other questions that you would want to know and fill in your CRM, et cetera,
Yes.
on the core ones that actually differentiate that first meeting from the rest of the pack. So I felt like that was really helpful.
Yeah. I'll add another one. And in a discovery, we've told salespeople you share features and benefits. It's a best practice, right? Well, if you're approaching those first meetings talking about features and benefits, bring a pillow. We can put them to sleep. So there's a chapter in the book, features, benefits, and boredom.
Yeah.
No one wants to be lectured on features and benefits. But if you think back to your childhood, at the end of the day, nothing was better than mom or dad telling you a story as you went to bed for the night. And that doesn't change because we're adults. And there's also a retention issue there. Countless memory studies have been conducted that talk about how unlikely it is for people to remember facts and figures when they're shared independently. But when they're embedded in emotive stories, much more likely to be remembered.
Mm.
And that's what we have to master. And one of the reasons why salespeople are stuck in this features and benefits cycle is if I joined your company today, how would I learn all these stories of the clients who joined before today? And so what most companies are missing, and I say most, I'm yet to find one that has something like this, is a deal pursuit story portfolio where you've laid out the framework for the stories that the salespeople need to master. So, first time outsourcing, coming from a particular competitor, had this particular challenge, and you share those stories and you structure it. And then during onboarding, you teach the salespeople those stories, test them on the delivery again during onboarding before they go out in the field to make sure they can tell it just as well as the salesperson that brought in that deal.
Yeah, I like that. When it comes to, how can like sellers demonstrate insider expertise without turning the meeting into the product pitch? Like, how can they share their value, their expertise, their recommendations without it feeling like a pitch?
Well, you have to lead someone to want to hear what you have to say. And that's where the questions come in. If you're effective at sharing questions and asking questions, that's where those opportunities arise. Because, there's 3 buckets, right? There's listening skills, there's asking question skills, and there's sharing information skills. People that are outside the sales world say the most critical sales skill is talking, sharing information, right? If you're a good talker, they say you should be in sales. People in the sales world say the most critical sales skill is listening. And I disagree with both of them. I believe the most critical sales skill is asking thoughtful, insightful questions. Because when you do that, there's something meaningful to listen to, and then you can share information appropriately. That's the art that we need to master, because then the other 2 follow on.
Yeah, I like that. I think that makes a lot of sense. Because when you ask those curious driven questions, like
Mhm.
where you actually care to try to improve their business and figuring out
Right.
what's the thing holding them back from doing that, then you could actually bring recommendations and strategies and solutions to move them forward. I think that makes a lot of sense. What was the most memorable first meeting you've ever seen or experienced? And what made it stand
That's
out
a
to
good
you?
one. That's a good one. There was one, it was with a very large beer manufacturer here in the United States, and the name begins with the first two letters of the alphabet. So you're probably with me there.
Yep.
And we had developed technology that the industry had never seen before. And we were meeting with a program manager. It was the day after the Super Bowl.
Hmm.
I'll never forget this. They're a big sponsor of the Super Bowl. And as we went through this consultation,
I'm
this
surprised they
program
had any
manager,
meetings on the calendar after the
isn't that
Super
amazing?
Bowl.
Yeah,
Like,
it was the day. I mean, literally, I was watching the Super Bowl at the hotel because I had a meeting with them the next morning. And at the end of that meeting, this program manager yelled touchdown because it was the day after the Super Bowl, because we had hit upon something that she had never seen, never heard of before. And she had so many challenges managing this program. And this took care of all of them.
and what did you do in that meeting that made it be a touchdown?
It's back to the questions that we were asking. They were emotive type questions where we brought out the frustration and the challenges, the risks that they had with their program. And it just brought it all right to the surface, and it teed us up so that she wanted to hear how we could help her.
Oh, that's awesome.
Help is a perilous word. We toss that around all the time in sales, and we're not careful about it, and we need to be. But I'll give you an example. So, Brandon, you're a good guy. You're walking down the street, and you get to the corner, and you see this elderly man with a cane, and you say, "Hey, would you like me to help you cross the street?" And he takes that cane and whacks you upside the head and says, "Who said I need help?" Another elderly man overhears the conversation and says, "You know what, Brandon, I'd really appreciate some help crossing the street." See, we walk into a meeting and we're meeting with a head of customer service, and we say, "We can help improve customer service." Well, what's the matter with customer service? It's insulted me. Now, if I've asked for help, if I've identified an issue and I say, "Hey, Brandon, is that something you could help us with?" Different conversation. When we offer help when it hasn't been solicited, it can be perceived as an insult.
When you mentioned touchdown, I felt like that was like a pattern interrupt, like that she used on you guys that threw you off. Like, what's a tactical pattern interrupt that sellers can use to immediately grab a buyer's attention in that first meeting?
So it's a concept that I talk about in the book called the positioning question. So when you think about traditional discovery meetings, we have questions around what they perceive could be better or different than what they have today. That's what we do. But if we have differentiators, then the likelihood that they're going to raise question or a point around an aspect that they don't know exists is somewhere between slim and none. I'll give you an example. I live in Minnesota, and Minnesota has a lot of screwiness to it. And one of the screwy things we have is every homeowner and every business contracts for their own trash removal. So on Wednesday mornings, there's a parade of garbage trucks coming down my street representing every hauler you could name because everybody signs with whoever they want.
Oh,
Well,
wow.
one of those companies, CEO reached out to me and he said, "I believe we have meaningful differentiators, and I believe my salespeople are ineffective at positioning those." And I was intrigued because every Wednesday my office faces the street, so I see this parade, and every truck does the same thing. Pulls up to the home, arm comes out, grabs the can, puts the contents in the truck, puts the can back down, drives away, get an invoice at the end of the month. That's the CEO said, "That's not the case with us." I said, "Okay." And I started working with them. He was exactly right on all counts. For example, they have a truck, it's called the Can Be Clean truck, and they're the only ones in the state of Minnesota with this truck. Twice a year, this truck follows the garbage truck and cleans your cans, cleans the garbage cans. Only ones that offer the service. It's included in their service fee. You're not being charged additionally for this. So if we rely on questions, I call them challenge questions, where they expose what people believe could be better or different. Like, what are 3 things you'd like to have? The magic wand technique. 3 things you'd like to have that you don't have today. No one's going to say, "I'd love if someone cleaned my garbage cans," because you don't know it exists.
Yeah, you wouldn't have even thought of it.
Right. So we developed a positioning question, an open-ended question, maps back to your differentiators designed to spark interest in the topic. Brandon, when's the last time you had your garbage cans cleaned? Because we know they never have unless they did it themselves. And if you ever had the privilege of cleaning your garbage cans, you know what a miserable experience that is. And right in that moment, we've now piqued their interest in something that they would probably consider commodity, just like me. I watch every Wednesday, I see the parade go by, and now you've introduced a differentiator. And that's how you get them to go, okay, so maybe I do need to pay attention to this conversation.
Yeah. And I feel like just saying, like, when was the last time you cleaned your garbage can? Because no one wants to clean it, think about cleaning it, smell the
So
garbage.
had them When's the
clean.
last time
Yeah.
you had your
Oh,
garbage cans clean?
yeah. Like,
Meaning somebody else did it.
I don't even know. Like, I'm thinking through that right now. I was like,
Mhm.
I don't want to touch the garbage can. I don't want to clean the damn thing. I don't want to ever
That's
see
right.
it. Like, I feel like that would sell me. Someone needs to sell your government. They need to just unify and have one company do the damn thing. Like,
Yes.
that efficiency
Yes.
is wild.
Yes.
Maybe
Makes no sense.
maybe you hit someone up over there and sell them the first meeting strategy, and we figure it out.
Yes, indeed.
No, that's awesome. Look, how can teams scale or train the first meeting differentiator so every rep is delivering it consistently, standout experience?
Mm.
You know, if you had 100
Yeah.
people and you had to, like, hey, everyone needs to do it this way, how would you recommend they do it?
Well, let's start the first step. We need to recognize that's something that needs to be done. One of my favorite questions to ask executives: if all your salespeople called you and said, I just had a great first meeting, what would you know for certain took place during that meeting? The most common answer is, Brandon, not a darn thing, because they've never specified the handling of this critical first step of the process. Like I said when we first started, the first meeting is your deal foundation. If it's weak, the deal is weak. And so the journey that I present in this book, it's for a salesperson to do it themselves, but it's also for a sales leader to build that framework. The first thing that the book takes you through is to reverse engineer that first meeting. Find what success is. And once you've defined what success is, then you can develop the game plan for how to achieve it. So from there, you craft the questions. Which questions? The ones that tie to the outcomes you've identified. What information are we going to share? Well, we need to develop emotive client stories that we're going to share because they tie to the outcomes that we've identified. That's the
Yeah.
way they start down that path.
Yeah, basically, like, trying to think through what does winning look like, and then auditing, and then creating that path so everyone follows it, essentially.
So let's talk about the end of the meeting. There's opportunities here that I find a lot of salespeople miss. So meeting's gone well. There's such a simple thing. Your parents told you to do it, but salespeople don't do this enough. Say thank you. Thank you for investing, not spending, investing time with me. Remember, they had 400 things to do on their desk. If they gave you 5 minutes, if they gave you 50 minutes, they put 400 things aside to sit down with you. So step one is to say thank you. Step two is you're going to give yourself a meaningful value test. If you think the meeting has gone well, Brandon, so how did we do today? I'm looking for them to say something back like, I am so glad we got together. You really made me think here. This really got the wheels turning for me, which tells me they got meaningful value out of the time. The next thing that needs to happen, if the meeting has gone well, and this is non-negotiable, and I'm sure you tell your salespeople this, that meeting doesn't end without a scheduled next interaction and defined next step. Unless you're like being ghosted, right? And it doesn't matter. It's not rookie salespeople. It's all the way up to the most veteran. Everything's winding down. Everybody's feeling good. And we said, ping you next week and we'll schedule a time to pick up the conversation or to do the demo. Key is highest then and there. Everybody's calendar is sitting right here.
Yeah.
That meeting doesn't end without scheduling and next interaction. But here's the piece that we also step on a little bit. We ask them, so what do you see as our next best step? Well, deal process is our expertise. They don't know how deals come to fruition. So asking them that question is flawed. What we should be asking is started with a recommendation. Brandon, based on what you shared with me today and everything we've talked about, what I recommend we do next is blank. We got to know what that next step is. And then it finishes with the question. What are your thoughts? This is our area of expertise, and people prefer to follow the guidance of experts. It's going to work every time? No, but you have that question on the end. If they see another path that needs to be gone down, you have that as a fallback position.
Yeah, I love that. And the new one that I've never even heard of was like rating the conversation. You said your meaningful rating or whatnot.
Meaningful value.
Meaningful value. I like
How
that.
can we do today? Because if I get an affirmative response, because I'm only asking if I believe the meeting's gone well. If I get that positive response, remember I said the overarching objective, a high enough level of interest that they want to continue interacting with us after that first meeting. If I pass that test, I'm going to have no problem scheduling next steps.
And one of the ways that I thought about doing this too, when I was reading the book, was you could even share like a multiple choice options, left to right or up and down, like bad, don't want to continue, good, but unsure, 3, great, let's, move forward with this. Like, so then it's just easy. Like, hey, if you had to pick one of these options on the value that you got out of today's meeting, which one would that be? And how would you rate today's call? Like there's creative ways where you could do it and kind of provide the different options, have them pick, and then what to do next based on what they say. And that's another cool way to do it. I guess last question for you, Lee, because I know your time's valuable. If you could give every salesperson one piece of advice to win more first meetings starting tomorrow, what would it be?
It's to recognize when you're prospecting, you're not selling your product. You're not selling your service. You're not selling your technology. You're selling the first meeting. And if you have that mindset that when you're prospecting, the only thing I'm selling at that moment is the first meeting, all of a sudden you start looking at your messaging. You look at what you're saying, what you're asking, what you're sending in an email, what you're leaving in a voicemail, and when you connect with someone live.
I love that. So you're selling the first meeting, focus on getting that first meeting, don't worry about anything else.
That's it.
I love it. Well, everyone, the first meeting differentiator.
Can I have one of those?
Pick it up, get it from Lee. Transforming sales focused discovery into client centric consultations. Lee, where can they pick up the book and where can they follow you for more?
So it's available wherever you like to buy books. Of course, it's up on Amazon, Barnes and Noble. It's in several of their stores as well. Wherever you decide to buy it, go to firstmeetingbook.com. First of all, you can download the first chapter free there. After you buy it, you go back there and take advantage of the bonus. I'm going to be delivering 3 private workshops exclusively for readers of the book. I'm going to help you implement the strategies that you read about, but it's only for those who purchase the book.
I love it. And these workshops, are they virtual, live? Are they
virtual
lessons?
They're really master classes, but yes, they're virtual.
Okay, amazing. And then Lee, where can people follow you for more?
I'm available on all the social media sites, LinkedIn, what have you. I've got a YouTube channel and you can follow my videos, Lee's Lessons. And my website is salesarchitects.com. Sales, ARCHITECTS.com.
Awesome. Well, Lee, thank you so much. And audience, thank you for tuning in. Start applying the first meeting differentiator strategies today to make more sales, serve more people, and make it your biggest and best year yet.